Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a single speech that is sending some serious ripples across the globe. It's a speech that really lays out India's new playbook for the 21st century. So, let's break it down. It all kicks off with this incredibly powerful line: blood and water cannot flow together. Those are some heavy, uncompromising words. So we're going to unpack the high-stakes world that these words come from and figure out what they really signal for India's strategy on the world stage. Okay, so let's set the scene. The place, the Red Fort in New Delhi. The day, India's Independence Day. But look, this was not your average holiday address. This was a declaration, a major strategic pivot, and it had some very clear messages for a couple of global powerhouses. Now, before we get to the messages India was sending to other countries, we absolutely have to grasp the core theme of the entire speech. It was this profound declaration of national self-reliance. And trust me, this is the key that unlocks everything else. That core concept, it really all comes down to this one word: Atmanirbhar Bharat. It basically means self-reliance. But this isn't just some buzzword. No, it's a massive national policy to make India less dependent on other nations, especially in critical sectors, and to really build up its own economic and strategic muscle. And this wasn't just talk, not just a philosophical idea. Prime Minister Modi immediately backed it up with some seriously ambitious initiatives. We're talking a brand new homegrown defense system, major economic reforms on the way, and real financial incentives to boost jobs right there in India. This is self-reliance with some real teeth. So, this big push for self-reliance? Well, it immediately sent out its first major ripple, and it was a direct and pretty stern warning to India's neighbor, Pakistan. The speech laid out what it called a new normal for India's security. The message was clear. From now on, India wouldn't just retaliate against attacks. It would hold their state sponsors directly responsible. This is a huge shift, right? Moving away from being kind of ambiguous to laying down a crystal clear threat. This warning was delivered in three distinct layers. First, a public rejection of what Modi called nuclear blackmail. Second, a very clear statement that India was now willing to escalate its response if pushed. And third, tying it all back to that quote we started with, a direct threat to reconsider the Indus Waters Treaty. And you have to understand, that is a critical water-sharing agreement between two nuclear-armed nations. A very serious message. But the speech wasn't just aimed at Pakistan, not at all. The second major ripple went straight to the United States, and it signaled a pretty significant recalibration of that very important relationship. So, what was a key driver behind this shift? Well, you can point to U.S. tariffs. We're talking up to 50% on some Indian goods. The speech basically framed India's push for economic independence, not just as a choice, but as something they had to do in the face of this kind of economic pressure. And here's the plan for building that independent future. The speech laid out this whole vision for a Make in India doctrine that gets right to the heart of strategic autonomy. This isn't small stuff. We're talking about India developing and building its own fighter jets, creating a domestic semiconductor industry from the ground up, and even establishing a self-reliant space program. So when you put it all together, you see this really fascinating two-front foreign policy taking shape. Towards Pakistan, the message is all about hard security, deterrence, and a punitive response. But towards America, it's about autonomy, economic sovereignty, and strategic divergence. Two very different playbooks for two very different relationships. Okay, so let's zoom all the way out. What does all this signal to the rest of the world? This is the widest ripple of them all, the one that starts to define India's new identity and its place on the global stage. The speech connected all of these policy shifts to this really powerful long-term national vision called Viksit Bharat, which means a developed India. The goal? To transform India into a fully developed nation by 2047, which is the 100-year anniversary of its independence. So this frames all these tough, assertive policies as necessary steps to reach that grand, ambitious future. Look, if you want to boil the entire speech down to one single idea, it's this. India is projecting itself as a capable, independent actor, one that is not easily coerced. This is way more than just policy. It's the projection of a whole new identity on the world stage. And that leaves all of us with a massive question for the future. You see, this speech wasn't just a statement of intent. It was a real move on the global chessboard. As India continues to assert this new self-reliant identity, the real story, the one to watch, is going to be how the rest of the world, from Washington to Islamabad and beyond, chooses to recalibrate in response.